A very good evening to you all, and welcome to our final talk in 2025. Tonight's topic is the return of Jesus Christ to the earth, which I think is a very fitting conclusion to all of the material and the thoughts that we've had this year. But let's look a little bit into the past, not too far, and look back to the reign first of Queen Victoria. And she reigned from 1837 until her death in 1901. And her empire was incredibly powerful. She was one of the most powerful rulers that the world has ever seen. And the story goes that one Sunday she was listening to a sermon from one of her chaplains on the subject of the second coming of Christ. And she was so moved that she said, "Oh, how I wish that the Lord would come in my lifetime." And her chaplain asked her, "Why? Why does your Majesty feel this very earnest desire?" And she replied, "I should so love to lay my crown at his feet." The Lord that she was referring to was Jesus Christ, and in this simple conversation, somebody who was essentially the most powerful person in the world at that point summarized the Christian hope for the future. The return of Jesus Christ to the earth to reign over all the nations of the world in peace and righteousness. Quite the statement from somebody who had that much power, and whilst we may today disagree with the ways that that empire was created, it nevertheless shows that some of those in charge even of such a vast estate still thought that there was something greater than them to come. And if that was the verdict that they could offer and that was the conclusion of their thoughts, then I'm sure that we can dig even more into the subject and find something worthwhile for today. Something that transcends just that moment and brings any one of us a true hope for the future. Now, this kingdom of God on earth has been anticipated since ancient times by followers of God. One of the most well-known references, for example, comes from the expansive prophecy of Isaiah. And you may recognise some of the words of this passage from the well-known music of Handel's Messiah as well. In Isaiah chapter 9, we read, "For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders. And he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the greatness of his government and peace there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this." And just like those prophets from a long time ago, Christian believers would also expect that this child who was born, Jesus Christ, whose birth is celebrated throughout the world in this season, this child will reign from the throne of his father, David, his ancient ancestor, bringing justice and righteousness undeniably in his form of government forever. So much greater than any form of empire, any sort of human ambition. This time is something far bigger and better. And clearly, if Jesus Christ is to reign on earth, he must reign after returning from heaven, where he currently sits at the right hand of God. This is mentioned a number of times, for example, in Psalm 110 and Acts 7, verse 55. And it was also expressed very clearly to the same disciples who watched Jesus go up into heaven at the end of the few years of his ministry on earth. And the angels who attended to these men said in Acts chapter 1, "Men of Galilee, why do you stand here looking into the sky?" And we imagine the scene as they were somewhat gobsmacked probably at him disappearing in front of them, even though they may well have had a good background from what he said, what he taught them. And so they said, "This same Jesus who has been taken from you into heaven will come back in the same way you have seen him go into heaven." So this process would be reversed, that he would return. And when Jesus then does return to the earth, the biblical account is incredibly clear that it will be unlike anything that has ever been seen before. So, just as those men of Galilee were surprised and they had to be reassured, comforted, and had an explanation from the angels, so the return will be somewhat stunning for anybody who witnesses it. Matthew chapter 24, verse 27 says, "For as lightning that comes from the east is visible even in the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man." Before we look at some of the wonderful pictures of God's kingdom on earth, the things that will follow this return, we should first mention that the establishment of this kingdom will not be a painless affair for many. As Christians, we expect a number of exceptionally difficult developments across this world before the King returns and as he does, before Jesus Christ sets foot once again on the earth in front of us. Often, colloquially, these sorts of events are referred to as the end times. The end, that is, of the age when mortal human beings reign on the earth in whatever capacity they muster, good or evil. Quoting from the same Matthew chapter 24 that we just looked at, let's look at some different verses scattered throughout the chapter. So, for example, verses 7 to 11, "Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of birth pains. Then you will be handed over to be persecuted and put to death, and you will be hated by all nations because of me. At that time many will turn away from the faith and will betray and hate each other, and many false prophets will appear and deceive many people." And then 19 to 21, "How dreadful it will be in those days for pregnant women and nursing mothers. Pray that your flight will not take place in winter or on the Sabbath. For then there will be great distress, unequalled from the beginning of the world until now, and never to be equalled again." And then verse 22, "If those days had not been cut short, no one would survive. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be shortened." And I think that gives an idea of the scale of the events that will be taking place. But in the end, and the focal point of the Christian hope, of course, is that Jesus will return and begin the process of establishing a much, much better world order. Matthew 24 also says, and we're quoting it in different orders tonight, but I feel this is important to draw the themes together. Matthew 24 says, for example, verses 13 and 14, "The one who stands firm to the end will be saved, and this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come." In verse 30, "Then will appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then all the peoples of the earth will mourn when they see the Son of Man," that's another term for Jesus Christ, "coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other." Reading a chapter like that, I don't think you can misinterpret the dramatic consequences of this and the change that will take place. But what will it be like in this kingdom? Once Jesus, the person that we have been looking at throughout our series this autumn and winter, what will it be like when he has returned? And what will it be like when he has established his righteous dominion? The Bible has a great deal to say about this, and we'll look at a few details which we have in front of us. And one particularly clear aspect, a good place to start and a nice place to start, is that God's kingdom will be full of inhabitants who live at peace with one another. A state which is aspired to in so many forms today. There are so many summits, so many deals, so many assemblies. This will be something far better. I'm reading actually only from the Old Testament about this because it contains some of the clearest possible predictions. From Isaiah chapter, not to take up sword against nation, nor will they train for war anymore. Isaiah 11, they will neither harm nor destroy on all my holy mountain. Psalm 37, but the meek will inherit the land and enjoy peace and prosperity. And so this is so different, isn't it, to the world that we see around us today. Even in a festive season like this, when people perhaps are trying generally a little more than usual to gather together in peace and harmony, well, this will far supersede anything like that, and that's an amazing thing to think of. And there are few places where this will hit harder than in the land of Israel, which has certainly not achieved the promised peace of future that many have looked for, and yet is a centre point of God's family. Moving on from peace, let's now think of justice, and the rulership of the world will be entirely just and benevolent. And this is promised in Psalm 72, where it says, "May he defend the afflicted among the people, and save the children of the needy. May he crush the oppressor." When it says he, it refers to the king of that kingdom, and the king of the future kingdom is Jesus Christ. And we also see themed words in this vein in Isaiah as well. He will not judge by what he sees with his eyes or decide by what he hears with his ears, but with righteousness he will judge the needy. With justice he will give decisions for the poor of the earth. And this is so different to what the nations have managed so far, despite those concerted international efforts over so many decades. I'm particularly taken reading those words in Isaiah by going beyond face value, by really reading the situation, by digging deeper into the morals of what needs to be decided. Let's look at another theme, abundance. And the Bible is quite clear that the future kingdom will experience an abundance of resources such as food, and an absence of hunger and wanting and poverty. Isaiah 35, water will gush forth in the wilderness and streams in the desert. The burning sand will become a pool, the thirsty ground, bubbling springs. In the haunts where jackals once lay, grass and reeds and papyrus will grow. And then reading from Psalms, Psalm 72, may grain abound throughout the land, on the tops of the hills may it sway, may the crops flourish like Lebanon and thrive like the grass of the field. Some amazing thoughts there when you see the inequalities and difficulties around us. Linked to this, it also talks about housing. Again from Isaiah, chapter 65. They will build houses and dwell in them. They will plant vineyards and eat their fruit. No longer will they build houses and others live in them, or plant and others eat. In the book of Micah, chapter 4, everyone will sit under their own vine and under their own fig tree, and no one will make them afraid, for the Lord Almighty has spoken. This picture of worldwide security at the time and as a result of the return of Jesus Christ is so different from the world that we live in now. where greed and poverty conspire to make living conditions an absolute nightmare for so many. And the success and the prosperity of those people in that era to come will not be measured by financial value of possessions or buildings. It will be measured by their ability to enjoy God's blessings and by that security and independence of other people's greed. So we've already looked at quite a number of things that are going to change for the better when Jesus Christ returns to the earth. There's even more. For example, we read promises about health and long life. Again, Isaiah, so much of this is from that book, it's well worth reading through. Chapter 35, then will the eyes of the blind be opened and the ears of the deaf unstopped. Then will the lame leap like a deer and the mute tongue shout for joy. Chapter 65, never again will there be in it an infant who lives but a few days, or an old man who does not live out his years. The one who dies at 100 will be thought a mere child. The one who fails to reach 100 will be considered accursed. For as the days of a tree, so will be the days of my people. My chosen ones will long enjoy the work of their hands. Removing barriers caused by poor health, caused by awful disabilities that cannot be overcome even with today's scientific miracles, that is something to look forward to. And then, finally, looking forward to universal worship. Acknowledging God will enable a viewpoint which transforms the earth, which helps enable and bring harmony and brings the enjoyment of those idyllic conditions of peace, justice, abundance, good housing, good health, long life. Yes, worship of the one true God will be key to those things. So often now we see religious conflict. It is tragic when we watch disagreements, often not just between nations or between sects or between tribes, but also between family members. We watch the difficulties that are caused by this. The return of Jesus Christ to the earth will bring certainty as to the right way to follow and the correct form of worship. It will be clear who should be acknowledged as the true God. And the Bible tells us about a time when worshipping this one true God will be enjoyed. Zephaniah chapter 3, then I will purify the lips of the peoples, that all of them may call on the name of the Lord and serve him shoulder to shoulder. Psalm 22, all the ends of the earth will remember and turn to the Lord, and all the families of the nations will bow down before him. Isaiah chapter 2, in the last days the mountain of the Lord's temple will be established as the highest of the mountains. It will be exalted above the hills, and all nations will stream to it. Many peoples will come and say, come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the temple of the God of Jacob. He will teach us his ways so that we may walk in his paths. Habakkuk 2 verse 14, for the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. And the centre of this worship will be the city of Jerusalem, the mountain of the Lord, as it is also frequently called there, but very different from its current state, very much renewed, very much a place where human interests are no longer the dominant force, but instead it will be a place where God will reign, bringing peace to the evil and violence that we so often see in that region of the world. At the end of the quote that we just had from Isaiah, which was from chapter 2, the last part, which I didn't just read, says, "The law will go out from Zion, the word of the Lord from Jerusalem." So that place will be changed as well and will be the centre of that religious system. In turn, we expect all of those things to be interlinked. For example, we expect that to bring peace to a troubled world just as much as all the other things. And there are many more beautiful words we could read which tie this all together. However, in conclusion, I hope that in this study we have begun to demonstrate for you that the return of Jesus Christ holds out a hope for the future which is greater by far than anything we imagine or can see or can plan for ourselves today. I hope that we are all inspired to look into these things for ourselves, to follow Christ and to share his love one to another as he commanded, and to join with the writer of Revelation as he concludes God's inspired word to his faithful. Revelation chapter 22, he who testifies to these things says, "Yes, I am coming soon. Amen. Come, Lord Jesus." So with that in mind, thank you for joining us for this series and for this year. And do keep an eye out on our digital channels for more talks to follow, God willing, in 2026. So you can view this online at theoneway.net, on our Facebook page for the Reigate and Banstead Dawn Christadelphians, and also on our linked YouTube channel. But for now, thank you very much, have a good night, and we look forward to seeing you again.